Hi, and welcome back to MyExcelOnline.com. Today we are going to go over some tips for designing tables in Microsoft Access. If you want to learn more about Microsoft Excel and Office, join our Academy online course and access more than 1,000 video training tutorials so that you can advance your level and get the promotions, pay raises, or new jobs. The link to join our Academy online course is in the description. So here I am in Microsoft Access. I've created a new database, and you can look over here and see that my object list is completely empty. And when you are creating a Microsoft Access database, you want to start with an object that is known as a table. A table is basically just a bunch of related information. So think Excel spreadsheet here. It's going to look an awful lot like an Excel spreadsheet and act an awful lot like an Excel spreadsheet, but you're not going to be able to embed lots of formulas like you would inside of Excel, because the purpose of an Access table is just to house the data that you will do calculations on later on, and you would accomplish that through what is known as a query. And we'll go over queries eventually in this series. But for today, we're just going to stick with designing a new Microsoft Access table. So let's say I want to create a system that keeps track of contact information. And the very first thing I want to put in my contact information database is a table of all of my contacts. So how would I go about doing that? Well, once I'm inside of Microsoft Access, I'm going to go up here to the Create ribbon, and I'm going to go over here to Table Design. And when I do that, I get a grid like this. And I can see these field names in this column right here. So think of a field name as a column header inside of Microsoft Excel. So let's think about the different kind of columns that we might want inside of our contact database. We probably want to keep track of our contacts' names, addresses, emails, phone numbers, etc. But when you are getting ready to enter this type of data, one recommendation I have for you is don't put the name of the field as name or full name. You want to think about breaking down the kind of data that you are putting inside of your table. So instead of name, let's do first name, last name, and if you want a middle initial, you can do that as well. So let me give you another tip for coming up with the names of fields. If you are going to program later on in Microsoft Access, it's a good idea not to use any spaces. And it's also a good idea just to use alphanumeric characters, like letters and numbers, and nothing beyond that. The reason is because once you're coding and referring back to the field name that you've created, you're going to have to use lots of brackets later on, and that becomes kind of a pain. And there's a lot of fields where you won't need to use brackets if you just keep them all as one word. So I'm going to do that here with my names. And to make it more readable, I'm going to start first name with a capital F and then a capital N for name. And then I'm just going to hit the down arrow and type in last name and MI for middle initial. If you are liking this video, please give us a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel, and hit the bell button to get notified when we release our weekly videos. Now if I look over here, I can assign a data type to this field for first name, for last name, and for middle initial. So if I click on this down arrow right here, I get a big list. So what I would like to do now is go over the different kinds of data types that you have. A short text will limit your characters by 255 characters. But a long text will allow you to have, I think it's over 32,000 characters. You're also able to format long text. But I would caution you against using that because it takes up more memory in your database. So if you can get away with short text, do that, and save long text for fields that actually need to be really long, like maybe some notes in your database. The number field would be used to store a number, and I'm just going to select that right now so that you can see some of the options that you have for storing numbers. If I go down here to field size, the default is a long integer number. So that's a range of just whole numbers like 1, 2, 3, etc. But if I click this down arrow, I can see that I have other numbers here. You could use integer, which is smaller than a long integer. And you can use this double number right here, which is really good for storing decimals. So if I were to select that, I can see that I can put decimal places down here. So those are just a few of the numbers that I wanted to point out. But since this is a first name field, let's change this back to short text. But some of my other options in here that are more commonly used are date time. You can also use currency, which is a little bit different than using just a decimal because you have the dollar signs. A yes no field is nice because that's like a flag. And we can come back to this one a little bit later in this lesson. A hyperlink will allow you to store a link to a website where you can just click on it and you'll be taken to that website. You can also do this for email, and every time you click on it, a new email will be launched. You can also store what's known as an OLE object or an attachment inside of your database. And with an OLE object, a lot of times people use this to store pictures. But I will again caution you against using this type of field because it will weigh down your database and make it a lot slower. And it's more susceptible to corruption when you have other objects in here. So I would recommend using a hyperlink instead of one of these kinds of fields. And you can also have a calculated field in here, which is a calculation of two other fields together. It is nowhere near as advanced as Excel, so I would recommend doing some of your calculations inside of a query because you get a little more flexibility there. But we'll talk about that later. And this lookup wizard down here is actually really helpful, and we're going to go over that in our next video next week. So for now, I'm just going to pick short text. And next we would have the address of the person in our contact list. But I want you to think about breaking down your address information as well. If I just write address here and I put the street, the city, the state, the zip all in one line, I won't be able to easily filter out a city or a state later on. So I want to break those fields down because I want to think about what fields I might eventually search by. So I would put street here, city, state, and zip. And maybe my next field, I could have cell phone, home phone, and email. And every one of these will be a short text field because none of them are going to exceed 255 characters, and they're all going to be text-based fields. And the last field I want to put on here is called personal. And I'm going to go over here to the data type, and I'm going to make this a yes/no. So think of this is a personal contact versus a work contact, and it will just be a flag for yes or no. So this is a good start for our table. So I'm going to go up to File and go down here to Save As. And I'm going to be prompted here. Do I want to save the database itself as another file? Or do I want to save the object as? And I'm going to hit Save Object As. And I'm going to hit Save As. And now I need to come up with a name for my table. So I'm just going to call this Contacts. And the same rule with the name of your tables. You want to keep this one word with no space, alphanumeric. You can capitalize between words if you would like, but that's just a recommendation. You don't have to do that. It just makes things easier in the future. And say OK to this. Now I'm going to get a message about no primary key defined. And for now I'm going to hit no. And I'm going to come back and tell you what a primary key is and why you want it. So remember when I came over here and I went to File, Save As, and I said Save Object As? I would like to tell you what an object is. So if I hit the back arrow, in Access, if I go over here to Create, I can see that there are several different kinds of objects that I can create inside of a database. The first one is a table. The second one is a query. The third one is a form. The fourth one is a report. And the fifth and sixth are macros and what's called modules that store your code. So we are going to go in depth with each one of these kinds of objects in future videos, but I just wanted you to know that the word object inside of Microsoft Access means one of these categories: table, query, form, report, macro, or module. So now that my table has been saved, I can come up here and right click and go to Datasheet View. And now once I'm in here, I can see the familiarity to Microsoft Excel. It looks like I have all my column headings across the top, and now I can start entering data. So let me show you why you probably want a primary key. If I put in John and then Smith here, and then let's say I have another contact whose name is also John Smith. Later on when I'm working with my database, it's going to become a little complicated. When I see the name John Smith, I'm also going to need to see either his middle initial or his address or his cell phone or his email in order to make sure that I'm selecting the right John Smith in my database. And that's going to be an arduous process to pick the correct record that I'm looking for. So the database world has solved this by using something that's called a primary key. So if I right click on contacts and I go back to design view, I'm going to highlight this first row by clicking on this gray box, right click, and go to insert row. And up here, I'm going to make a new field called contact ID. And under my data type, I'm going to hit the down arrow, and I'm going to select this special kind of field called auto number. Now I can only have one auto number per table inside of my database. But let me show you what the auto number does, and you'll see why that will make sense. Also, I'm going to click primary key up here so that Access knows that this is the way I'm going to uniquely identify each record inside of my table. So if I right click on contacts and go to Datasheet View, I'm going to be prompted to save. Say yes. And now you can see that I have an automatic unique number for every one of my contacts in here. And if I go down here and I put in Joe Smith, I can see that a 3 has automatically been created right here because this is an auto number field. So you can see why you can only have one auto number per table, because this auto numbering is happening per record. Now let me show you something interesting. If I highlight a row and right click and go to delete record, I will be prompted whether or not I want to delete this record. So I'm going to say yes. And then if I go over here and I put in Jen Smith, I can see that my auto number has been incremented by 1. The 3 that used to be there is gone forever, and a 4 has gone in its place. So these numbers will not necessarily always be sequential based on deleting records and inserting new ones. So just keep that in mind. So if I close this table, and if I ever want to get back in and make changes, I can right click on this table object over here, and I can go to design view, and I can see the names of my fields and their data types. Or if I close out of here and right click on contacts, I can click open, and now I'm back in the view that looks more like an Excel spreadsheet. Oh, and remember that personal column, whether this was a personal contact or not? You can see that over here, and it's just a checkbox of yes or no. Because if I right click and go back to design view, you can see that I made that a data type yes no field. So hopefully this gives you a good introduction to some of the basics of creating tables inside of Microsoft Access. We'll go over more tips on creating tables next week. So if you have any questions or comments, please leave them below and we'll get back to you. Thanks for watching, and see you again next time. If you want to learn more about Microsoft Excel and Office, join our Academy online course and access more than 1,000 video training tutorials so that you can advance your level and get the promotions, pay raises, or new jobs. The link to join our Academy online course is in the description.
If you like this video, subscribe to our YouTube channel. And if you're really serious about advancing your Microsoft Excel skills so you can stand out from the crowd and get the jobs, promotions and pay rises that you deserve, then click up here and join our Academy online course today.